I only came across Escaping Tonight a few years ago after reading many Facebook posts of how kids had been traumatised by it back in the 1970s. Now that was good enough for me to track it down and see what it was like. And the good news? I thoroughly enjoyed it. In the opening scene of the series, Marianne falls from a horse and is confined to bed, and has to be homeschooled by Miss Chesterfield. Out of boredom, she finds an indelible pencil in her grandmother's old drawing box and starts to draw a house. That night, she is transported to that house in her dreams. Later, she draws a boy, Mark, who turns out is also in bed and suffering from a serious illness in the real world. Marianne realises that Miss Chesterfield is his home teacher too. Marianne gets upset when Mark buys Miss Chesterfield a large bunch of flowers for her birthday, certainly larger than ones that Marianne bought. In a fit of rage, Marianne scribbles on the windows and places large rocks outside the house, to which she gives one eye. When Marianne draws a radio, they can hear the stones talk and become threatening. Marianne and Mark must escape the house before it's too late. Escaping Tonight was broadcast over 6 25-minute episodes and was aired in the April and May 1972 on Wednesdays at 5:20 p.m. There's limited sets and a few outside broadcasts, but what is there suits the nature of the plot and shows what can be done with some imagination on a limited budget. Although I didn't see this series when I was younger, I was only 4 at the time, I can appreciate this would have scared the living daylights out of most young people tuning in to watch this on a Wednesday tea time. The 2 child leads are accomplished in their roles, although the language is very middle class, with Mark being described as beastly several times. There are several times throughout the episodes where the character of Marianne is irritating with her quick temper and petulance. But it's a very measured performance from everybody throughout. The colour prints of this production are sadly lost forever, however the black and white prints do still exist, and as I didn't have access to a colour TV in the early 1970s, this is how myself and most other people would have seen it. Now, there are some copies available on YouTube, but the ones I've seen are dark and murky and are almost unwatchable. It was released by the now defunct Network DVD, and although still black and white, it's much more clearer and watchable than the YouTube copies. The story comes from the book Marianne Dreams by Catherine Storr, first published in 1958 and is still in print today. This spawned a sequel, Marianne and Mark, which takes place several years later, but it doesn't have the same haunting element as the first book and is pretty much impossible to get hold of. Escaping Tonight was remade in 1988 as a movie called Paper House, which had lots of promise but wasn't quite as creepy, and there was a significant change from the end of the book and the original series. It's well worth a watch, but it's certainly not as good as the original. Having said that, there are some minor differences between the original novel and Escaping Tonight. The ending is slightly different, but not in the way that Paper House was different, and to be honest, I think I prefer the ending in Escape Tonight more. It just feels more complete. There's a very limited cast for Escaping Tonight. The 2 juvenile leads were cast from local schools. 11-year-old Vicky Chambers of Tudor Grange Grammar School for Girls later on had further success in Coronation Street during the early 1980s as Ken Barlow's secretary. 13-year-old Stephen Jones, a pupil at Moseley Modern, was picked to play the role of Mark, and although at the time he stated in an interview he'd like to do something behind the scene in television, he's never appeared on TV again and appears to be out of the industry. Sonia Graham played Marianne's mother and had a long successful acting career both before and after Escaping Tonight, appearing in series such as Compact, Within These Walls and London's Burning. Patricia Maynard, who played Miss Chesterfield, was a TV regular during the 1960s right through to the 1980s, appearing in most popular soaps, and was also Dennis Waterman's second wife, even writing the lyrics to the Minder theme. Edmund Pegg, who played Dr. Burton, has been on our screens pretty much constantly through the 1960s right through to the present day. All of the outside filming took place at Bar Beacon near Aldridge in Birmingham, and although you never fully see the lighthouse, the steps are part of a war memorial, which you also see Marianne sitting on in the final scenes. The house itself was a simple wooden structure made purely for the series. However, the fence and the gates of the house are still there even today, just a stone's throw away from the war memorial itself. To be honest, standing there recording this footage, the area hasn't changed in 50 years, and you could still expect to see Marianne and Mark on the steps of the lighthouse. As I said at the start, there are many reports on Facebook where children of the 1970s said how scary this series was when they first watched it, along with the haunting Dalek-like screams of the Stones. And although Escape Tonight may not appear as impressive nowadays on our large widescreen TVs, it's easy to imagine the discomfort this would have caused to children crowded around a small black and white set in their living room in the early 1970s. It's a great example where cheap TV doesn't have to appear cheap. Even the ending of each episode and the tune hummed by Vicky Chambers adds a spooky atmosphere to the proceedings. Like all of the TV shows we'll be looking in this series, it's another example of something that just really wouldn't get made nowadays. It's challenging and sometimes disturbing, and perfect for kids.
The light! The light! The light!